This week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry, with agriculture broadcaster Orion Samuelson and yours truly, Max Armstrong, and featuring agriculture meteorologist Greg Solier. This week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Firestone. You never farm alone.
Inflation and interest rates. Lenders are paying attention. Hello, folks. I'm Mike Pearson. Thanks for taking the time to join us this weekend. Here at the Anchor Desk, you might notice I've got Greg with me. And Greg, we've got you here because we've got to talk about this weather. The heat in the Pacific Northwest, it's something else.
That's
and
right.
It's moving.
Along with the fires out there, bad air quality, more lightning-based thunderstorms. But we're here to talk about kind of a pattern shift here that we got to stay heads up for. While that heat has dominated the northern plains, the Dakotas, it's on the move and likely impact parts of the Great Plains, western Corn Belt with time. Capping off the atmosphere, that means inability to make any significant rainfall in that part of the country. Hit-miss chances in the far northern and eastern Corn Belt. But a heat wave isn't coming for the heartland.
All right, we'll talk about that a little bit later in your forecast. But in the meantime, Greg, it's been very cold in Brazil. What does that mean for us?
La Nina is getting going. It's been speculated. We're beginning to see it now. And I think as we get deeper into the fall and winter season, you wanted moisture recharge, you're going to get it. But it may come at a price for those plains and Corn Belt locales on what will be probably a busy and active moisture-laden fall and winter season.
Right. Harvest might be slowed down, but we'll be rebuilding those moisture profiles.
Exactly.
All right. Things to keep an eye on. Thank you, Greg. And folks, we're also keeping an eye on what's happening with inflation and with interest rates. Max had a chance to visit with Marshall Hansen from Farm Credit Services of America, and he talked about what the outlook might be for interest moving forward.
Well, there's been a lot of talk about inflation, and of course, with inflation oftentimes comes higher interest rates. And so we field a lot of questions about those things right now, and a lot of conversations with customers about how do I protect myself against higher interest rates. We spend a lot of time working with customers to try to develop the kind of profile of their borrowed money to make sure that they're not exposed to those kind of risks. So yeah, we spend a lot of time working on those kind of things.
We've grown accustomed to low interest rates. I mean, is it a little bit difficult sometimes to get producers to think about, wait a minute, we could be climbing out of this and it could have a very real impact on you?
You bet, absolutely. It's really not unfathomable at all to explain to somebody that, hey, your interest rates, your interest cost, I should say, could double without interest rates really going up significantly. And so that just trying to get your head around that has become, a little bit of a challenge because, like you said, we've grown very accustomed to these low rates.
What are some of the general guidelines that you give your members? You're talking to them and you say, okay, here's some things you really want to keep on your radar screen.
Yeah. So I don't know that we have really a profile, but I will tell you that we spend a lot of time talking with customers about how they can protect themselves from changes in interest rates. A big part of what we do is we offer opportunities for people to lock in interest rates on real estate loans, especially in that anywhere from 10 to 25 year time frame. And so we do spend a lot of time working on trying to help people find a balance between some of their short-term interest rate risk, but then taking some of that longer-term interest rate risk off the table.
For some of our producers, 2020 was an amazing year. Some of them looked at the bottom line after the year was done, and it was one of the best ever. It didn't treat all agriculture equally, did it?
No, absolutely not. And I work with a lot of livestock producers who most definitely kind of came out on the short end of a lot of those kind of things. Challenges everywhere from getting their animals processed to just understanding what the marketing strategies were going to be, and dealing with supply chain disruption and all those different kinds of things. So yeah, no doubt we were glad to see 2020 turn the calendar to 2021. And while all those problems haven't necessarily been resolved, at least we're kind of starting to understand what the new normal is.
Some parts of the country we're seeing very significant elevation in land prices. Is that affecting your members, especially in the livestock sector too? To a lesser extent, I would imagine, right?
Yeah, we probably see that impacting our row crop producers more than anything. And the big question kind of becomes, so how long will some of these commodity prices remain elevated, and how much will they impact real estate prices? I think it's easy to say that, well, we're going to see a short-term increase, but the last time crop prices got high, we did see an increase. We saw some backing off, but it doesn't take much to push those prices right back up. So definitely something that impacts, even if it's not directly our livestock producers, it's indirectly, because the ripple effect tends to be for several years after that.
Thanks, Max, for that report, and thanks to Marshall Hansen for taking the time to talk to us. I know that inflation is on a lot of people's minds, and he mentioned it kind of depends on how long these elevated crop prices last. So let's dive into that. Joining us on this week's episode to discuss the markets is Boyd Brooks. He's a partner at Consus. Boyd, let's talk a little bit about what's going on here in the corn market. We've got this potential heat dome coming back. It's pollination time. The markets are kind of sleeping it off. What's going on?
Yeah, we had quite a week here in the corn market, up early in the week and then kind of drifting back as we get towards later in the week. So just a bunch of different battling forecasts between the GFS, the Euro. They kind of keep shifting some rains back and forth, but it seems like the heat is definitely coming back in. So I think we've got that. I think we've also got a potential with the ocean freight being so high, you haven't seen a lot of new crop sales for corn or soybeans from China. So I think that's got some people maybe a little worried on the demand front. But it's July. We're trading weather, we're trading supply side, we're trading just the back and forth in those markets.
We certainly are, Boyd. And as you mentioned, ocean freight has been a concern. We do still have a number of old crop corn sales that have to get out. Bring us up to speed on exports as they stand so far. Any updates on this week's export sales report?
Yeah, this week's export sales, we actually saw some cancellations from China. I think it was about 6.2 million bushels in the export sales report. We had a net cancellation of, I think, about 80,000 metric tons. So as we close in on the end of the marketing year at the end of August, we've got 6 weeks left. So we really looks like we may struggle to get the entire commitment out. Doesn't mean that they're all going to be canceled, but it may just roll into the new year and part of the 2021 marketing year, which will start on September 1st.
That's right. It is getting close, but it's still summer. It's still the driving season. I know ethanol has been on the rebound in a big way. We've seen production ramping up, but this week we also saw stocks build in the ethanol world. Let's talk a little bit about what's happening with ethanol, given all this concern about inflation and Americans hitting the road again, Boyd.
Yeah, the ethanol piece is kind of interesting, like you say, with the stocks building up. I think probably you've got the freight issues again, and when it comes to the export side, I think there was some ethanol that came into California on the import side last week. That may be part of the increase in the stocks there as well. Yeah, we're going to drive. It seems like we're not going to shut down because of COVID again, so I think that the ethanol will remain to be pretty close to break even. A couple months ago they had really good margins, and now they've kind of slipped back a little bit with DDGs being extremely cheap versus where they have been historically. It comes back to logistics, right? So if we can't move it, it backs up in the system and stuff has to sit there. But yeah, ethanol margins are okay. They're not great, but you do have a little bit of a penciling in a forward margin out in the JFM time frame. So the ethanol is going to stick around. Hopefully we continue to drive and eat through some of those stocks and maybe get some exports back as well.
That would be good to see. Boyd, I want to talk about the wheat market real quick here. We continue to see this cone of drought and heat really highlighting wheat country here in this country. Boyd, what's going to happen with this wheat market as we roll through harvest?
Yeah, the wheat market is interesting. You've obviously got the hard red wheat, soft red wheat, and then the spring wheat has been the big story. So, That's been the driver this week with 11% of that crop rated good to excellent up in North Dakota on the spring wheat. So it's a very tough situation there. The cash market's going to try to figure out what wheat needs to move to what market, and I think you have a lot of work left to do in those.
All right, a lot of work left to do, things left to discuss. We'll be back for more with Boyd Brooks. This portion of This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by the Soybean Checkoff. Tips, videos, how-tos, and more. If it has to do with ag tech, you'll find it in the Tech Tool Shed, your unbiased one-stop resource. And we're back talking markets with Boyd Brooks. Just before the break, we started talking about the wheat market. And Boyd, as I look at this spring wheat market, as I hear from my friends in the Dakotas talking about really the terrible condition of this crop, I wonder why are prices still sub $10? What are we doing here in spring wheat?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, that spring market, obviously you go back to 11, 12, 08, went crazy. We were trading in the 20s. The wheat market is going to be interesting as you have more competition from around the world, more competition from protein, with soybean meal being cheap versus the oil there. So, we need to get those exports back, and we're probably losing some of those on the spring wheat. The other interesting thing about the wheat market now with this last rally, we were feeding quite a lot of wheat in the Southern Plains, Southeast, and Eastern Corn Belt. But now the wheat is starting to price itself out of those rations. So it'll be interesting to see if that will give us a pop in the corn basis, a discount in the wheat basis, as it has to go to the mills at this type of spread there. So, but yeah, the spring wheat market, it's one that I don't follow as closely as the soft red, but it seems with that crop being in bad shape that there could be some more upside there for sure.
Yeah, and soft red, the story is still going to be let's look at exports and let's look at feed. Is that going to be the determining factor in pricing going forward?
Correct. I mean, the flour for soft red wheat flour demand's fairly stagnant. At these price levels, we're probably not close to exports, but we have been feeding some. So now you've got a spread of, $1.50 between corn and wheat. So that's probably going to price that soft red out of the market for the near term. But you also have some significant quality problems in Indiana, Michigan, parts of Ohio from too much rain. So if it's cheap enough basis-wise, that's the market. That's the job of the wheat market, is to price those basis levels where it'll move where it needs to go.
All right. Well, speaking of getting things priced, Boyd, the soybean market has been volatile since, the end of last summer. But recently, it really seems as though a lot of this enthusiasm for soybeans, or at least soybeans as an investment vehicle, is coming from this demand for biofuels that the Biden administration might be pursuing. Therefore, bean oil is making up a larger share of what's driving these moves. And that market's a little interesting. Boyd, talk to us a little bit about what's happening in the veg oil markets broadly.
Yeah, it's extremely interesting. It's something that we haven't seen really since, I compared it in my notes the other day to kind of a revisiting of the ethanol and the corn. Bean oil now is going into the renewable diesel, which is something that I'm still learning about as far as what that means versus the biodiesel. But these feedstocks have become extremely profitable for the refiners and the blenders to use as a renewable source. And so what you've got now is you've got bean oil being a larger portion of the crush market. And so we're almost crushing the beans for the oil, and the meal has come down in price, with even the basis reflecting that in many parts of the Midwest. New crop basis I heard quoted at 40 to 30 to 40, 50 under the other day for bean meal. So, and that's affected the DDG market. So you got DDGs at a level that we haven't seen historically versus the price of corn. So yeah, it really shook it up, and it shook it up in such a short period of time that nobody, I don't think, expected bean oil to take off and lead this market higher. You kind of go back to the beans themselves. Yeah, August makes beans, right? We need rain in August, and so we've got some definite dry areas out there. It concerns me a little bit that we have not been able to bust through that $14 on new crop and hold above it. We kind of keep banging our head there.
All right, well, those are going to be things to keep an eye on. Our thanks to Boyd Brooks of Kansas.
Chad Colby's look at agriculture technology comes your way next, brought to you by the IBM Watson Decision Platform, combining AI with Internet of Things data to help agribusiness increase yields, improve quality, and drive sustainability.
Drones, of course, continue to become an essential tool in a lot of farmers' toolboxes, and nowadays they're used for a lot more than just taking photos. Chad Colby explains.
I'm sure you've noticed the Midwest airspace has been a little busier than normal. Hi everyone, I'm Chad Colby, and aerial applicators have been really working hard taking care of these crops recently. But something new is aerial application using drones. Now, remote application with a drone is nothing new. It's been around heavily since the late 80s in a lot of places around the world. Yamaha has had a gasoline-powered unit since then. But the one I saw this past week was battery-powered, was more of a traditional drone like you see right here. It's got a 20-foot spray pattern. It's got a little 2.5-gallon tank. They're applying fungicide. This gentleman was on a 15-acre field trial. And when you look at the drone, it's pretty traditional in most senses. You can see the tank here. He's reloading the product. It's got a nice big carbon fiber boom system. He had everything he needed inside that trailer. As far as operationally go, he can do about 15 acres an hour with one unit. Now, they do operate these in a swarm also, so they can triple that output. So they can get up to as many as 300 acres a day when they've got 3 of them. Now, as far as the drone itself goes, you can see right there him adding product, but he's also got to manage his batteries as well. He can get 2 flights out of 1 battery. You saw his 2 chargers. That all works with that controller, and what I mean by that is it marks its spot where the sprayer quit spraying, and the drone will go right back to that spot and continue. Now, I was really impressed with the workflow, but this drone's got some great technology on it also. You see in that lower left-hand corner, that gray drum that was spinning when it took off, that's the LiDAR sensor. So it can make sure the drone's at the proper operating height and also look for any obstacles. It's great to see technology like this moving out of specialty crops and coming into commercial agriculture here in the Midwest. For This Week in Agribusiness, I'm Chad Colby.
Thanks, Chad. And Chad did want me to remind you, Rantizo, that drone company, will be one of the exhibitors at this year's Farm Progress Show, which is coming up quick. Welcome back to This Week in Agribusiness. The folks who talk to and about farmers, the agri-marketers of our industry, got together for the first time since 2019 at this year's National Agri-Marketing Convention. Max Armstrong was there, and he had a chance to talk to the winners of some of the awards.
Awards presentations are a big part of what the National Agri-Marketing Association does each year during its annual gathering. And the Agribusiness Leader of the Year Award recognizes outstanding leadership in private, public, or academic service.
It's a surprise. It's an exciting time. The key thing for me is just having an opportunity to be part of the ag industry for so many years, and to get this recognition, obviously, it would be a highlight from my side.
You've had a long path through this industry and have had the chance to work with the people of the land for quite some time. Drawing on that, what were some of the key points you shared with the NAMA members here at their meeting?
There's really 2 key points that I made in the talks that I made. Is the first one is, we as an ag industry, I've always felt makes us unique and special in my mind, because we just have a common purpose. We all rally around the need to bring more nutritional value, addressing nutritional needs around the world. And the second one is, and this comes from personal experience, I benefited a lot in my career from having good mentors that invested time in me and helped develop what is my skill set in my career. And I really wanted to just reach out to people early in their career right now and just encourage them to find those potential mentors, develop those relationships, because I just think it's a key part of an individual's development.
If you find that right individual, isn't it a giant step to helping you at least achieve some level of success. That person who will not only uplift you, but ridicule you a little bit, make you laugh hard, show their trust in you. I mean, there's a lot that goes with mentoring, isn't there?
Well, there is, and on a personal side, we've just recently moved back to Indianapolis, and I have a couple mentors live there, and they're both in their close to 80 years old, and I meet them for breakfast once a month now, and they still serve that role from that standpoint. And so I think the real key here is when it works, and you'll know when the match is there and it works. It's a long-lasting relationship, and to me, that's rewarding on either side of that relationship, depending on where you're at.
Selected for the award of the Ag Association Leader of the Year, Chad Gregory, the President and CEO of United Egg Producers.
It was quite an honor for not only myself, but also our industry to be recognized. I think, in some respects, the egg industry is not as big or well known and recognized, and so for this award to give our industry an opportunity to be recognized is pretty significant. I'm proud of that. It's all about the people, right? It's not about me. This award isn't actually about me or even for me from my perspective. I think it's about the people that are in my life, the people that I've surrounded myself with, and that's the people that I work with, the staff and consultants that we've put together, the team that we've put together, the people that are on our board of directors and the people we work for, and that's the farmers and the producers. And then ultimately we get to do this because of the people that are back home, our spouses, our family, our friends that allow us to go do these jobs. That's what's really most important.
How important is an association to the producers out there? They get very involved, very busy in the day-to-day routine. Some of them you don't get involved in association, but that membership is how valuable?
In the egg industry, it's incredibly valuable to their day-to-day businesses and the success and sustainability of their business. It may not be the same case in other agriculture associations, but for the UEP, it's a very big part of their lives. And we are leading the efforts on everything from animal welfare, food safety, environment, sustainability, and so forth. And they depend, when I say they, the farmers, the producers, the egg companies, they depend on United Egg Producers to help them solve all those problems. Their committees, our board of directors, these owners of these egg companies are on all these committees and on our board, and they come to the meetings and they help us make decisions to move this industry forward all the time to benefit their family businesses.
And honored by NAMA as the Marketer of the Year, Amy Bugg, Brand Marketing Lead at AgroLiquid, St. John's, Michigan, longtime member of the National Agri-Marketing Association.
There are many stories that I could share about meeting someone at a NAMA meeting and just cold calling, walking up and talking to that person, and then finding out that we'll end up working for the same company in the next year, or we're working on a NAMA project together, or on a committee together. And then that friendship leads to very solid working relationship. And then also, if we're not working together in the future, it's always a resource that you can go to and get information from and talk to and bounce ideas off of and get some insight so that with NAMA, you never feel alone. It's this great community and family of friends that you can rely on that will help boost the industry.
The members of the National Agri-Marketing Association so glad to be together again, recognizing the value of membership and association, that while it was nice to be able to connect from a virtual standpoint last year, it does not replace in any way, shape, or form the value that the members get by being together in person, they feel, and that could be said about many of our associations in the agriculture industry. Reporting from the meeting of the National Agri-Marketing Association on behalf of This Week in Agribusiness, this is Max Armstrong.
Thank you, Max. There is a lot of enthusiasm to get back out there and get back together in person. And I'm excited. I've got the opportunity to get back out there a few times over this next month. I'll be at these events coming up. I'd love to see you at some of them, especially at the Farm Progress Show.
This Week in Agribusiness, serving America's most essential industry, is brought to you by Firestone. You never farm alone.
Thanks for joining us on This Week in Agribusiness. Of course, it's summertime, which means a lot of farmers are taking those classic tractors out for a drive and tractor rides across the country. And, of course, some of them are probably gearing up to come to Rantoul for the half-century of progress. Max has a conversation with Lee Cloncher about his new book that I think a lot of folks will be interested in.
Mike, we're getting so close now to the half century of progress, just a little more than 30 days away. And joining us is a gentleman who will be at the half century of progress. He's no stranger to the folks who love old tractors. Lee Cloncher, just to refresh the memory of folks who maybe have come across your work in the past, you've done a lot on International Harvester, you've done books on motorcycles, and the list could go on and on. You're well known in the motor gearhead community.
Absolutely. I like to say I made a business out of being a 14-year-old boy. I read about a lot of big machinery, but probably my best known work is Red Tractors. That came out back in 2013. It's a real deep history of modern IH tractors. We included some of yours, happily. And that book, one thing we do is interview a lot of engineers and designers and people like that, and along with beautiful photography.
Beautiful photography. Let me underscore that. There is no tractor photography equal to Lee Cloncher's. Max Armstrong would tell you that. That might make some good book liner notes sometime in the future. Let us point out quickly that you have a new book coming up. Yeah, you've got a new one, the John Deere Evolution, it is called, I believe, to satisfy those folks who need their green paint fix.
Correct. This one's been probably 10 years in the making. We took a lot of the things we learned from doing the IH books that translated to John Deere, and we actually just recently made the book even bigger and with more pages and a bigger size, because we had gotten stuff that we feel it stands up to Red Tractors. So that book's going to just be out this fall.
I did the calculation on the number of pages that you said you had earlier and what you now say you have. It's 20% more pages you've added to that book.
It is, and it's about 20. I think it'd be about 25% bigger too. It's much larger. It's just the late material was so good that we just felt like, hey, this has got to be the big, beautiful books our readers have come to expect.
For folks who'll be looking for you at the half century of progress, is there a place at a time when you'll be signing books?
Absolutely. We'll be near the main event tent, and every day at 4:00, we're going to have a raffle, and I'll be there signing books. So that'll be a great time to come visit us.
Thanks for taking the time with us, Lee. Look forward to seeing you at Rantoul. Lee Cloncher, Mike, you've seen his books, and he has one more he's bringing along for those folks who love the old tractors, and some not so old.
Thank you, Max, and thank you, Lee. That is some gorgeous photography. You can check out that book at octanepress.com or see a lot of the real deals in action at the Half Century of Progress, August 26th to the 29th in Rantoul.
Now, agriculture meteorologist Greg Solier brings us his farm weather forecast for the nation for the week ahead. It's presented by Pivot BioProven, the nitrogen-producing microbes that stay put, whether or not.
Well, as promised at the top of the show, Greg is back with more weather. Greg, it is hot out in the Pacific Northwest. Any changes?
Subtle changes, not by much, but it's, you got to be able to crawl before you can walk, before you can sprint. And this hot ridge, which has been firmly ensconced here, showing signs of movement to the east and southeast here in the coming days. Not the greatest of news for the rest of the plains and the western Corn Belt locales. And once again, these dry-based thunderstorms, that's not the whole story, though. It's the fire situation, almost in excess of 400,000 acres, taking into account Northern California, Oregon, Washington State, and parts of the Northern Great Basin. So that continues on, as well as the heat, a bit of a frontal boundary, no real organized rainfall, maybe a thunderstorm through the Canadian Prairie, and problems there. And of course, at least you generate for areas across the rest of the country some pretty photogenic sunrises and sunsets with all the dust and debris in the air. Bad air quality, too, in the Pacific Northwest. A little more onshore flow, but that'll lift the air. A couple of thunderstorms across the Sierra. We've had drenching rains across New Mexico and sections of Arizona. The hot dome is here. Triple-digit readings for the plains, central plains, as the week wears on. That frontal boundary washes on out. Thermal low Southern California, a little change, monsoon showers and thunderstorms, and the heat wave builds across the Great Plains there, Mike.
Well, Greg, let's talk a little bit more about that heat wave. How far east are those hot temperatures going to stretch?
They're going to be moving into the triple triple-digit category as we see it now behind this frontal boundary, first originating over the central and northern high plains. Warm, less humid air across the remainder of the Corn Belt. Nice to see drought improvement over sections of Wisconsin and Michigan. That will be changing, as well as over the central and western Corn Belt. Mid and upper 90s here with high humidity, triple digits across the plain states. A couple of active thunderstorm clusters, all or nothing, keeping temperatures at bay. Northern and far eastern Corn Belt locales. Monsoon moisture in the southwest. The tropics are quiet. Here's the hot dome for Kansas and Oklahoma. Triple-digit readings there. The atmosphere is capped off. Not much organized rainfall for the Delta and southeastern plains. Little change here across the southwestern part of the country with a tropical low. A couple of showers and thunderstorms Gulf Coast here. Hot dome, high pressure, sinking air, no rain, and triple-digit readings on the southeastern plains mid to late week.
Greg, for our viewers out east, are they going to be cooking under this thing too?
They won't. A series of frontal boundaries continue to make the move on through here. Some rain at times, and this is a key drought area. Northern New England for now, less humidity, drier air, warm temperatures across the Ohio Valley. The heat back west of this frontal boundary that moves through the Great Lakes region. Storm clusters along and north and east of it. Here is the heat wave weather pattern, central and southern Corn Belt and areas back to the plain states mid to late portions of the week. What weather pattern continues on over the southeastern part of the country? Little change over the southeastern sections of the plain states. We'll keep an eye on the Gulf Coast with showers and thunderstorms as the heat wave continues on for Kansas and Oklahoma.
Now, Greg Soye is back with his extended farm weather forecast for the country. Presented by Pivot Bio Proven. Visit pivotbio.com to find a representative near you.
Well, Greg, you talked a lot about the heat that's incoming.
Yep.
What about moisture? Who's going to get some and who's not this next week?
Well, that's it for moisture, by the way, for the Corn Belt over the past couple of weeks. It's back into dry mode. This might be a little optimistic, widely scattered, far eastern and southern sections. Some downpours across the Gulf Coast, probably the wettest of the pattern. Southeast California, desert Southwest, all or nothing. Watch the flooding potential there. Some welcome rains over the drier reaches here, as well as over the northeast of New England. But again, lack of any organized rains expected over much of the heartland, including the Corn Belt and the plains this week.
Well, now, how do temperatures shake up as we start looking at that first week in August?
Here is that hot dome. Again, it's made its move from here, its back edge across Big Sky country, now making its way into the upper Midwest, eastern plains and western Corn Belt. Clouds and moisture will keep temperatures below average from the southwestern states through Texas to the Gulf Coast areas and through Florida. Look at the monsoon kick over the southwestern sections of the country. Dry time and increasing drought northwestern part of the country, as well as much of the heartland, including the Corn Belt and the Plain States region. Some normal precip over the northeast and New England.
Now, how about the week of August 9th? What do you expect?
A little flattening, but that hot weather is still firmly ensconced here. Again, centered on the Dakotas, now moving through Wisconsin, back into Iowa, Minnesota, the key drought areas. We'll see it worsen here in the weeks to come. Below average with the cloud cover and the moisture over the deep south and southeastern part of the country. Healthy monsoon set up here. Maybe some tropical weather, Gulf Coast area, wet weather down through areas of Florida. Note the expanding dry and below average rainfall. Corn Belt back into the Pacific Northwest.
Now, how about the week of August 16th? Greg, that's state fair time. What are the temperatures going to be doing?
Long lines at the beverage stand here. Your choice, and you will need it with the almost coast-to-coast feel. Mid to late summertime, and a corridor still a well above average centered across Montana, the Dakotas, northern and western Corn Belt, even through the lower lakes region. Will keep temperatures a bit below average, but humidity high over the deep south and southeastern parts of the country. Normal precip for the Pacific Northwest. Healthy monsoon setup continues over the southwestern sections of the country. Maybe a little meandering tropical feature or two. We'll keep an eye on things over the southwest Atlantic Gulf Coast area. Precip will be below average across many areas of the Corn Belt back into the plains. Normal across sections of the far east and southern Corn Belt.
Next on This Week in Agribusiness, it's Max's Tractor Shed, spotlighting another great American tractor.
Sometimes when you're going around at a tractor show, you'll look at a machine and you'll say, that's not quite right. I'll show you one that was very obviously not quite right. In Max's Tractor Shed, brought to you by Store Lock Tool Cabinets. You've heard me talk about the quality. You need to see it firsthand. They'll have displays of the Half Century of Progress and the Colossal Farm Progress Show coming up in just a few weeks. Well, as you walk around at a tractor show, you'll see many times things that'll surprise you. You'll say, what in the world was that farmer doing with that? He put on this particular switch. He added this lever. There's a piece of wire strung out there. It was the way the farmer made that machine work better for him. Now, this one, You didn't have to study it very long before you said, wait. There's a problem here. This is the barbecue Farmall M that Mike Miner owns these days, but he'll hasten to tell you he's not the one who tricked this tractor out. Apparently it was a yard ornament somewhere in that region of the Midwest, and then it was converted into a grill. That's right. Just fix your steaks right there in that Farmall M. Apparently somewhere along the road, the guy's wife told him to get rid of it. It sat out of the yard too long. And sooner or later, it became Mike Miner's Barbecue Farmall M at Watseka, Illinois. Well, let's see if there's anything unusual that'll be crossing the block at Big Iron Auctions. I bet there's some equipment you can use. Mark Stock checks in with his weekly report.
Well, Max, we round out the month of July on July 28th with our big sale featuring over 1,500 items. A lot of retirement sales taking place this time of year, and John and Lisa Sundberg will retire from Red Oak, Iowa. They're selling their New Holland CR 960 Combine. They've got a Kinsey 3600 Series planter. They also have a John Deere 8200 mechanical front tractor that will sell. Eldon, also known as Pete Weddle, is retiring from Galva, Kansas. He's got a John Deere 8310R mechanical front tractor. He'll sell his John Deere 9660 four-wheel drive combine, plus he's got a Great Plains solid stand 3-section grain drill. He'll also be selling equipment for Vancelius Ranch and Cattle Company, Inc. out of Ponca City, Oklahoma. They've got a John Deere 9610 combine, plus a 1998 John Deere 8400 mechanical front tractor. They also have a John Deere air seeder. Bertram's Legendland Dairy LLC in Wisconsin will sell a Klaus Lexion 570R rotary combine. The Ozentoski brothers in Bellwood, Nebraska will be selling 2 Massey Ferguson 9560 combines. They've got a Massey Ferguson 9250 Draper head, plus they've got a 2050 Drago 12-row 30 corn head, and we'll finish up with Hone Farms Retirement out of Harrisburg, Nebraska. Will be selling a couple livestock cattle pots, plus a lot of livestock handling equipment. It all sells July 28th on BigIron.com.
The FFA Chapter Tribute is sponsored by Nationwide, the #1 farm insurer in the country. To register your FFA chapter, go to nationwidesupportsffa.com. That's nationwidesupportsffa.com. Nationwide. We stand for you.
This Week in Agribusiness is proud to continue our salute to FFA, and lately we've been getting to know the Missouri State Officer team. This week, Crayson Leonard, Missouri Vice President for the State FFA, is joining us. And Crayson, what prompted you to get involved with FFA in the first place?
Hi, well, thank you for having me. I grew up with a dad that was a retired ag teacher, and I grew up listening to the stories and all the memories that he shared. And at the time, I attended a Christian school in my community, and I made that decision to transfer over to the public school and get involved in FFA. And just that, my freshman year, I found my niche and I found my passion within my FFA chapter, and that's what started my career in FFA.
And you stayed with that career. You grew it throughout high school. Now you've graduated. You're going to the University of Missouri this fall, but you're going to stay involved in leadership. Why did you choose to continue your involvement in FFA?
Well, being an only child, I just found that connection with FFA, and from there I was able to attend academies, leadership academies. I own and operate my own beef stick business. I have my own social media platform. And then just those little things that FFA has taught me, it's made me grow as a person, and being able to build up my resume and build up my toolbox, and being able to go into this next year of service for Missouri FFA, and being able to share my connection and memories and leadership with other members and inspire others to do more.
And that's what a lot of it's about, right? Is building that enthusiasm. And I think you're going to have plenty of opportunity to do that this next year, don't you?
Yes, I agree. Coming back from COVID, it's just been it's ready to get going.
Absolutely, it has been crazy. Well, we wish you the best of luck, folks. That's Crayson Leonard. She is a Missouri Vice President. This Week in Agribusiness, proud to salute FFA.
Now, Samuelson Sez. Insight and commentary from Orion Samuelson.
Remember just a week ago when on Samuelson Sez I said, don't mess with Mother Nature because she can have an immediate impact on crop production in various parts of the world. So I had no sooner uttered those words than I received this on my market news service. The week has begun with the already shattered corn market in Brazil enduring another blow as a result of a new cold wave sweeping across the southern and central areas of Brazil, bringing frost to corn-producing states and raising fresh concerns about export volumes and breaches of contracts. The article went on to say, the cold wave is expected to hit its peak on Tuesday of this past week, is showing potential fresh frosts in the states of Parana, Mato Grosso, São Paulo, and one spokesman said it's going to be a historic crop loss. The second Brazilian corn crop, known as safrinha, that's the summer corn crop, severely affected by dry and warm weather during the key development areas and then getting hit by this frost. It'll mean contract breaches. It'll mean that Brazil probably won't move as much crop into export as they had hoped to because of the cut in production. 59 million tons, the initial estimate. Now they're estimating 22 million tons of corn from that summer crop known as safrinha in Brazil. I said it before, I say it again. Don't mess with Mother Nature. My thoughts on Samuelson Sez.
One of the great things about living in rural America is our front row seat to wildlife. A lot of us across the country see critters climbing across our fields and our roads all the time. Well, Max noticed in his travels there might be more fawns this year. He talked to a couple of his Twitter followers.
Well, have you seen more of them? You drive a lot, Mike, and I just wondered if there have been more of those fawns out along the road this summer that you've noticed. I saw it in places as far-flung as Iowa and Illinois, Indiana, Kentucky, North Carolina. I posed the question in the social media of farmers and ranchers. Have you noticed more fawns? And boy, oh boy, did I get a response. Several of you even had pictures that you shared with me. Take, for example, Kyle in Illinois. He posted that this fawn was, as he put it, playing chicken with a combine as he was harvesting his wheat. So Kyle relocated the fawn over to the woods. He said the little one didn't seem to appreciate that act of kindness. Dan in Oklahoma said he was working his way through the wheat harvest. As he came across a pair, he had them up in the cab with him. Ashley shared that in central Indiana they've been seeing more fawns too. She said, and I quote, "Scooped these two strugglers up out of the river about a month ago." And look at the ears sticking up in that cab as this one took a ride with Aaron in Illinois. He said, "It's the first one I've ever seen this small." And it looks like Evan was out in a hayfield in Wisconsin when he picked up this little hitchhiker to try to get him out of harm's way. And Devin, a little more than an hour east of St. Louis, also said he had seen more fawns this year than any other year. I talked with a couple of wildlife experts about it. They said they're not sure there are more fawns, that maybe it's just been the weather that has encouraged them. They didn't think it was a pandemic factor, but we can blame just about everything, it seems, these days on the pandemic. One thing that comes to mind, though, is the crop damage that will occur. I know some of you in those deer-infested areas where the numbers are too large struggle with this kind of a problem every year, especially around the perimeters of fields and even on out into the fields. There are just too many deer, and you just automatically know you're going to lose so much of the crop because of their numbers. It also comes to mind the kind of a Christmas that many body shops will have this year if the numbers are in fact greater than usual. We wanted to share with you the news that Big Boy is going to be out running across the heartland again this summer. That massive steam locomotive will be going past pastures and fields on the prairie and running into towns and cities in 10 states. That steam locomotive built in 1941 for the Union Pacific Railroad. It's quite a sight. They brought it out for the first time on excursions, I believe it was 2 summers ago. Yeah, it was 2019, just ahead of the pandemic, and the Union Pacific will have it running again this summer. It will leave Cheyenne on the 5th of August, and as I said, it'll go into parts of 10 states, and it's due back in Denver, I think, Labor Day weekend before returning to Cheyenne the beginning of September. You can get all of the information on Big Boy at the website up.com. That's the Union Pacific site. Just scroll down toward the bottom and they'll have the information on that huge locomotive. I believe there were 25 of those delivered to the Union Pacific Railroad. 7 of them stand on display to this day in places like Omaha, Green Bay, St. Louis, and Denver, but I think there's only one that's still running. And Mike, it is massive. That locomotive and its tender combined weigh 1.2 million pounds, and from front to back, the locomotive and tender take up about the length, well, 2/3 of the length of a 747. That's one way to explain it to you. And folks who saw it 2 years ago, they say it was a memorable sight, unforgettable, in fact. So there's a chance to see it again this year.
Well, thank you, Max, and let me second that recommendation. If you get a chance to see Big Boy in action, do it. It is an impressive sight. Thanks so much for tuning in. We are glad you all took the time to join us this weekend. We look forward to seeing you right here next week.
Closed captioning for This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Kubota. Shape your world. This Week in Agribusiness is brought to you by Firestone. You never farm alone. This Week in Agribusiness is produced by OMAX Communications in association with 22 Creative Group. We invite you to visit us online at agbizweek.com.